Welcome back. Amnesty International has just released its annual report, but how successful has it been in its mission to tackle human rights abuses? While its campaign to control arms was successful, with 139 governments voting in favour of a UN resolution to work towards an arms trade treaty, and a number of political prisoners, such as Cuban activist Nestor Rodriguez Lobaina, have been released. But the report states little headway has been made in countries such as Sudan, where the ready availability of arms continues to fuel human rights violations in Darfur. And it cites countries such as Zimbabwe, where it says the persecution of human rights activists has led many to remain silent. Turkey, the Philippines and China are among other countries accused of suppressing freedom of speech. Well, we're joined again by our guests. In London, Paul Hilder, the campaign director for global human rights website avaz.org, and Malcolm Smart, director of the Middle East and North Africa programme at Amnesty International. And from Washington, Ariel Cohen, senior research fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Malcolm Smart, if I could come back to you. When you issue these reports, who do you expect to actually implement them?
Well, what we've done today is launch our annual report for covering 2006, actually. So it's been an in-depth look at a survey of some 150 countries around the world and their human rights developments there and their progress. What we're also doing every week is publishing other reports which are more specific on Darfur, on Zimbabwe, on other countries around the world, where we are being much more detailed.
But what actually happens to them? Because I think the danger is that people think, oh, well, the reports are coming out all the time and they're saying things are bad, but nothing changes. So who do you expect to sort of be your policeman when you highlight an issue? Is it the UN you're looking to for action, or who is it?
We're looking first and foremost to particularly the governments that are responsible for that rule the countries where the human rights abuses are taking place. We're drawing their attention to things that they need to address in order to comply with their obligations under international human rights law and treaties. We're addressing leaders of armed groups where they are involved in committing violence, telling them to cease their action, calling on those who perpetrate atrocities to be brought to justice. We're looking to the media to bring a light onto the dark places of the world. We're looking to mobilize public opinion, actually, in countries to take an international responsibility for upholding human rights and to press for change through whatever means, whatever leverage, whatever influence can be brought to bear. And we do have our successes, but of course we're not complacent. We face a major challenge.
Paul Hilder, in the era of the internet, do you think an organisation like Amnesty is still effective?
Unquestionably, it's still effective. This report is really important fuel for people taking political action, as we are, hundreds of thousands of people all around the world. I think the question is, how does it translate into action? How does it translate into political action? So one of the things we're working on intensively is the US Congress people who can decide whether Guantanamo stays open or not, and whether those people in there at the moment in extra-legal limbo will be tried through a straightforward legal process or freed if there isn't really a case to do that. And I think more than that, let's look at the situation in Darfur, where maybe Ariel Cohen would be more in line with myself and with Amnesty, where really what we need is both an effective system for protecting the civilians in Darfur, but also more than that, we need a real peace deal to guarantee things in the longer term. That's what I mean about political action being important over and above shining a light.
Ariel Cohen, what do you make of that? I mean, there must be areas where you think organisations like this are useful.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that Darfur is a shining example where a broad coalition can be put together from the right-wing Republicans to left-wing Democrats in the United States, from right to left in Europe, and hopefully more and more governments in the Middle East. Specifically, the Middle East is still one of the darker areas in terms of human rights violations. Look at the rights of women in places like Iran and Saudi Arabia. Look at mutilation used as legal punishment in the countries where this is allowed. But I think in general, the rights of women, the rights of ethnic minorities, cultural rights are these are a huge agenda in the Middle East that hopefully Amnesty and others will address in the years to come.
Malcolm Smart, one of the issues that you raised in the report is the problem with the internet, which is in many ways empowers people, but at the same time you've highlighted the fact that it can be clamped down on by unscrupulous regimes. How can you go about changing that? That's a pretty tricky task, isn't it?
It is a tricky task. I mean, the internet, I think, has, in a way, is revolutionizing the information flow, and that, in a sense, is a big challenge to governments who want censorship. They don't want the truth to come out, and what we're seeing is the whole blogosphere, information coming out of places like Iran and other countries, and this is, I think, unnerving governments that have actually controlled the free flow of information and have acted to try to clamp down on the internet. But I think they're finding it difficult to do that. How can we work against it? Well, by drawing attention to the instances where there are government clampdowns, where people are imprisoned for what they say on the internet, by working with the internet service providers to ensure that they aren't somehow drawn in to assisting government clampdowns, as has been raised in the case of China in the past.
Paul,
that sort of thing.
Paul, you wanted to come in there?
This is an enormous issue for us. Without the internet, we actually can't operate as we do. And I think a very good case of this is in Egypt, where you have a regime, quite a close ally of the US, which has been closing down both political freedoms as well as social freedoms, has put some of its bloggers in prison, both a Muslim Brotherhood blogger and a blogger who's very much against the political Islamists. But those people are now working together to try and free themselves, and I think that principle of freedom of speech is absolutely essential, and it's probably something we'll be campaigning on soon. I think Amnesty already works on this.
Ariel Cohen, the principle of freedom of speech, essential. What do you what would you say to that?
Right. Internet freedom is very essential, and we also see it in the former Soviet Union and in China, that internet is being cracked down on by the governments. But there's also a very dangerous use of internet by radical and violent organizations that are recruiting people into the ranks of their fighters, of terrorists. And we need to together think about how to prevent abuse of the internet by those who are really snatching bodies for their causes, for violent causes, for suicide bombing campaigns, or to send them to fight in Iraq. So that is another very important aspect of internet that we need to think about.
Okay, gentlemen, I'm afraid we've run out of time, so we're going to have to leave it there. But thank you very much indeed to our guests, Ariel Cohen there from the Heritage Foundation, Malcolm Smart from Amnesty International, and Paul Hilder from avaz.org. Thank you, all of you, for joining us. And thank you for watching this edition of Inside Story. We, of course, welcome your comments and suggestions, so please email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. That's insidestory@aljazeera.net. Thank you very much for watching. Bye for now.